version of the Austin View Meetup, where we just share something we're working on. It could be a side project like mine is going to be. It could be something you're actually working on at work if you're allowed to show it. And if you want help with something, you just want some feedback on an approach you're taking, or just something cool you haven't thought of. So if I can get Zoom to listen to me, I'll get started. Let's try this. This is the hardest part for me, is when my mouse starts moving, nothing else works anymore. So I'm either talking or I'm typing. And we're loading, and we're loading.
So what you're saying is your brain works on a single thread, not
multi-threaded. It does. It's a fun fact, everyone's brain works in a single thread. Fun fact, some other people think it doesn't, but those people are wrong.
They're just using multiple threads.
Some people just context switch way better than I do, I think.
Yeah. Nothing showing yet.
I'm having computer issues. It just says it's connecting. Let's try that again. Okay. This is invigorating.
Oh, no.
Talk amongst yourselves. Technical difficulties. I can show my technical difficulties to the camera.
Look at that. Oh, oops. It's not working.
Oops.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
It's working.
We're going to fix this in post. It's going to look great. There we go.
Why don't you do a quick introduction of who you are?
Who I am. Cool, does that mean? Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah.
So yeah, my name is Justin Boyson. I'm a senior front-end engineer at GitLab. That's it. That's pretty quick. I'm going to keep this one pretty short and sweet because it's not a real presentation. We're going to show you this fun
core
thing.
person at Vue.js, Austin.
I'm the what person?
Core.
I'm the core person.
Creator?
I'm the host.
I don't know, host. I don't know what you call it.
Host, organizer. Vue.js Austin is my fault. We talked about it, kind of. It's my fault, and it's Proof's fault. Proof is gracious enough to host us here. And I had mentioned it one time, and Chris, one of the founders of Proof, said, that's a great idea, let's do it. He went and made the group, set up the very first meetup, and said, hey, go make content. I was like, awesome. I have nothing to talk about. But we figured it out. We've been muddling our way through ever since. Okay, so now that I got this up and running, I share my screen. That one. Just do the desktop here. There we go. All right, so there's my goofy little workout app. So I have an idea. I've been muddling through this thing for months. Because I'm an engineer, I decided to overcomplicate it about 5 times. I think I've deleted and re-spooled up a little Vue app to do this. I think this is version number 5. And it still doesn't really do much right now. But I'll go into some of the stuff of how like nothing saves yet. Like this is basically static information. But I am pretty tickled with the way I got the dev environment for this to work. If I have it open up here already. Cool. So basically, this thing is pulling from a local JSON file that's using the JSON server NPM package. I'm doing that so I can develop locally very quickly without having to worry about setting up a Firebase instance or an AWS store or whatever. I just want to be able to tinker with it locally and directly manipulate the data until I figured out how I wanted the data to look. And one of the ways I've done that, and this is a little trick that I showed in one of our first meetups, is using, let me show you the Vue config here. This little trick here. Right now it's just hard-coded to go to this API JSON server. But what I'm doing is I'm using a Webpack alias so that everywhere I have API, it's gonna point to this JSON server.js. Now what I'll do when I have an actual production or multi-environment version of this is this will be environment specific. So I'll read the environment that's coming in. So if we're local, it'll point here. If we're a dev, it'll point to a dev, probably Firebase where I'm sticking this, and a production one if we go that far, one. But it lets you have multiple environment specific databases. It's very useful for doing end-to-end testing as well. So I can have a test environment we can detect if it's in a CI build, and I can have it reference any server I wanted that has pre-built end-to-end testing data. And this is a pretty nice way to do it because you don't have to change your code. Code always stays the same. So effectively what I've done here is I've built my contract inside of this JSON server.js guy, which is here. And most of what this is doing is just wrapping fetch in a nicer way for me to go pull information from localhost 3000 is what JSON server uses by default. Let me show you. So I can show you these guys side by side. There. There's my data. Sorry, Zoom's in the way. There we go. So you kind of see how this works. So basically I decided on just a handful of very flat structures. So I'm probably gonna put this in Firebase because it's so easy to use, but I'm not a big fan of document data stores. So this still kind of replicates a relational data structure because it makes more sense to me. I have ideas for pulling some charts and reports later on because I want to get really, really nerdy with the very little amount of weight that I can lift, that I can track going from like 10 pounds to 12 pounds over 6 months. But yeah, so I've got this period list, which I've actually structured to how Bootstrap View works. If Bootstrap View expects their select list to be in this format here, so I followed that. By default, when I build data schemas, I put unique IDs, created, updated, deleted on fields on everything. The deleted on field is mostly so that I can do a better UX with assume the user knows what they're doing and allow them to roll back if they made a mistake. I'm not a big fan of prompting people for, hey, are you sure you want to delete? It's like, just let me do it. And this way I can flag something is deleted, remove it from the UI, but it's still there if we ever want to roll back later.
It's like a soft delete.
Exactly. Exactly. It gives me the opportunity to just undo. So I can do my stuff. Oh, shoot, I messed up. I can go fix that. So all of my data structures follow that same thing, which you can see right here. I actually use this new item function to create like a default. After it's something new, so they all have those same fields. There you go. In this case, you notice I'm not building an ID because JSON server does that for you automatically. And likewise, any other database I'm going to use is going to give the ID for me automatically as well. Moving down here, again, I'm kind of a pretty flat data storage here. So I've got my workouts, and then each exercise is mapped to a workout ID. Each exercise is complete unto itself. I did this format because I felt like the data would be easier to report on later. It's not truly relational at this point. It's kind of flat, but it's such a small project, I figured it'd be okay. Now, that's how you see the data works. We can kind of look at the JSON server. Here, I'm again trying to emulate what it would do in production. So I'm doing, a lot of them are just straight pass-throughs. I can see here my get exercise list is just straight pass-through for what's effectively fetch. My get is just a wrapper for fetch. The reason I've made my own little fetch wrapper is because by default, fetch returns a promise with a giant object of like the response and all kinds of things. I don't want that. I want the JSON, unless it doesn't be JSON. So simple fetch wrapper will always give me JSON back. Just things to make it easier to work with here. But yeah, that's pretty simple. So there's my data being pulled in. Show you a little bit of the code. I'm still playing a lot with the view promise stuff we talked about last time. And I'm actually just starting to get into the question we had before about how do you handle state? Because right now it's all pulling everything directly. Like if I show you the entry container, this guy is calling get workout explicitly right now. And eventually this will be mapped to a parameter in the URL, but that's fine. So the issue we talked about last time is that, well, this is really cool, and view promise takes care of a lot of stuff like the loading indicators and the errors that might come up. How do you handle like warm standby data? Are you going to pull from the database every time? That's not a very good user experience. And I just started to think about that last night, but I didn't get a chance to wrap it up before we got here. But that's, in a nutshell, this is basically the same pattern all the way down. I've got a container which wraps a form that is now a dummy component. It's bigger.
One question.
Yeah, please.
On your view components here, I noticed that you're putting template underneath script. Is there a reason behind that?
It made more cognitive sense to me. This is the same pattern that the Vue Enterprise boilerplate follows is what Chris Fritz recommends. I read a blog post from him and it made sense to me. It's kind of conceptually, when I look at a website myself, I kind of look at like the script as a whole that does things, then your presentational layer, which is supported by CSS to style it. Almost like an order of importance, if you will. And I generally found that the bulk of my time is spent in one or the other, and usually for me, it was in the actual coding up top.
That kind of makes sense. Might change that.
But, well, either one's wrong. I mean,
it works no matter what.
It does. But Vue create defaults the other way. So like Vue create, when it first scaffolds out a project for you, the template's up top.
Okay.
So I saw it once. I like it. It's my personal project. Here we are. This is the way GitLab styles their stuff as well. So habits. And yeah, any other questions, please jump in. You think I'm doing something, like, man, why'd you do it that way? It's kind of weird. This is really fine. But I can keep talking through this if you like, but that's the gist of it. I'm going to go.
You had mentioned state.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about using UX or some sort of state management?
You know, I'm not sure yet. I'm probably going to start with a simple event bus because this is such a simple project. But I may end up going Vuex just so I can piggyback off of Vuex persistent state, because I do want to cache things locally and have a faster response. Because this will be used almost exclusively on a phone. That's why I put it down to this small size, because I'm expecting to use it on my phone at the gym. So the internet might be kind of shoddy.
Are you going to make it a progressive web app?
Absolutely. 110% I am. I am not going to use native script. We'll see after it's a presentation. I might change my mind. So I'm not sure yet. I'm sorry?
Can you demo like?
You know, the only thing that works right now, right now again with the state. So actually, it's a great question because you're going to see an issue with what I'm doing right now. So let's add another bench. That's fine. That guy, say 100 pounds again. We only got 12 reps that time. So when I click add, it actually saved, but it didn't update the list down here. And that's my current state problem. So a pub sub would be okay. Like I could go kick off and say, go refresh the workout object. It would grab me the rest of the other sets in this case. So I just refreshed it manually. You can see that it did add it. But I'm not sure about the correct approach yet. So that's my next step in this particular project. And then I need to start writing tests before I get too far ahead of myself, because testing is good. You should do it even in your side projects. Yeah, that's all it does right now. It's very simple. I wanted this thing to be super, super simple. So I was trying to think of like putting my user experience hat on. What is the environment like here? You know, I'm going to be in the gym. I'm going to have a single thing I'm about to do. I just want to log in real quick. I'm probably tired. I want as few input as possible. So I eventually settle on just leaving this input form open all the time. And that's why it's just a straight insert. It's never going to edit. There will never be an edit. I'll give it an option to delete, but that's it. You don't edit an exercise, delete it. And then if I absolutely have to, I can go to the data and change it myself. But ideally, theoretically, once you're done working out for the day, you're not going to go back and change it tomorrow. Oh man, I forgot that I did something 2 days ago. That's almost never going to happen. So, and if it does, I have access to the JSON too. So, pretty simple.
What happens when you click the workout at the top? Like, how does the UI respond? Is it like
It doesn't do anything yet.
Well, I mean, like what?
When I click this workout button here.
Yeah, like so it has a new date.
Yeah, so this guy defaults to the current day. So if you were to click new workout, basically all you would see happen is these rows would go away, and this date might update if you were looking at an old one and you went to a new one. Eventually, I want to have a history piece as well, so you can see historical workouts. But this is my primary focus right now. Right now, I just want a way to capture the information. Currently, I'm using a Google form, using a Google Forms entry point that dumps into Google Sheets and grabs the data pretty much like I'm doing right now. But then I have to open up 2 separate windows to see what I was doing. And there's things like I want to be able to see what I did before. In a Google form, I can't do that. I don't know what I lifted last time for this particular periodization cycle and this whatever. That information is very helpful. Like you can see right here, I actually have it stubbed out. I can't highlight it because it's in mobile view, but it's right there. It tells me, hey, last time you were on this period, this is what you did. That helps me inform what I might want to do this time without having to go look at separate windows. the problems I was trying to solve for myself. Hopefully I'll have this thing done soon because I put way too much time into it.
I use another app that says symbols for the previous function. It's the
Oh, nice.
If you want to spread out line item, it has a placeholder.
That's a fantastic idea. And for people watching this later, if they do, the idea was to put the previous weight and reps as placeholder text inside these inputs. That's a fantastic idea. I will definitely do that. Save a little bit of time and space. Good job. What's the other app that you use?
It's called Strong.
I've
It's
used
very
Strong.
similar to this. It's like really, I feel it's really well done.
I've used Strong before. It was very good. And the only reason I'm not still using it is because I'm an engineer and I need something to do. I'm not trying to build a better wheel. I'm just practicing my wheel building. Cool. Anybody else? Questions? Any care? Cool. Let's get on to a real presentation. But anyways, I guess real quick, that was my general idea for like the show your code thing. Not super formal. You muddle through. Here's some stuff that I did, things I liked about it, things I liked about it. It'd be really cool if people come up with challenges they have about something. Like Edward was talking about something earlier, but it's work related, so we can't actually show that code. But that's the general idea. So if you have anything you want to talk about now, you can, or later on we can, or in the future, please bring it up. But I won't put anyone on the spot, but raise your hand if you want to talk about anything. You do?
Sure.
Do you want to come present? Awesome. Mike's going to come present. Yeah.
Why do you have the typeface for like certain keywords?
Because it looks dope.
It does. Like sometimes I'm like, is that this or is that?
I noticed that too.
I wish I had a real solid engineering reason.
All right, so how do I share this thing?
Oh yes, go to what was the URL? Do you remember it?
Useproof.com/view.
What?
VUE view. Yeah. It'll take a minute. It'll redirect you, and it should prompt the Zoom window open up. That's what it's supposed to do.
I don't know. It was a long time ago. I had my Wi-Fi.
And then whenever you're in, just share your screen, and the rest of it's already recording and going through this laptop here. Like you want. You still have to join.
Do not want to turn on the computer on.
Oh, you can. I'm just speaking computer audio. That's fine, and then mute your laptop speakers.
It's funny. I always thought that.
But you still have to join though, or else.
No,
I
here.
started googling stuff.
Oh, can you without audio?
PlayStation
Yes.
view.
I didn't think that was possible.
Yep, it is.
Cool. Nice.
So, all right, so I'm Mike Robillard. I technically work for a company called Ascend Learning, and I am working on my new project after they bought my previous company. The project is called Get Out of the Family, and it is meant to be a photo sharing site. The idea is that you can not only upload photos, but pull photos from Dropbox, Facebook, other places where you have photos stored, and then it will go through and automatically do facial recognition on it, location recognition, and map where the pictures were taken. And then eventually the idea is monetize it with things like being able to print your photos and turn them into photo books and stuff like that. Oh, sorry. You guys sort of talk directly into it to make sure it's face. That better? Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of like what the goal is of it. And I was doing really well with getting a lot of work done on it until about a week or so ago. And I discovered that, well, first we should probably talk a little bit about how this is built. It's a front end is in Vue. The back end is Lambdas written in Python. I'm traditionally more of a back end developer, so Unlike you that wrote all the front end stuff first and then figured out the back end, I did all the back end stuff first and then did the front end stuff. So,
I feel like that's how you're supposed to do it.
well, no, I think it's because if you're a front end person, you want to do the front end first. If you're a back end person, you want to play in the back end, and the front end is like stuff that you hate to do.
It's the only tool you have is a hammer, to a nail.
Exactly.
All I see are front end nails.
So anyways, so it was written. So the front end is written in with Python lambdas. Originally, the way I wrote it was I was using Cognito. It's all obviously running in AWS as lambdas. I was using Cognito with their user pools to log in, and that's where my problem when I came into last week was. So they've got user pools. First of all, Cognito is a mess. I don't know if anybody's ever used it before. It is a mess. It is a gigantic mess. And one of the messy things about it is it says if you read part of the documentation, oh, you can have your login, you can have your normal login, and then you can add Facebook and Google and have lots of different logins to it and stuff. And then when you go and actually try to run it, it just gives you error message after error message when you actually try to run the code to do the linking properly. So thought it was going to be working well, and then it stopped working well. So I've been struggling with trying to figure out what I'm going to do about the authentication part of that, and that's been my struggle for like the last week.
Are you stuck with Contra? Did you request something else?
So I did actually. So I was like, well, what about Auth0? Why, it's expensive. And Okta and all those other ones, they're almost all the same price. So they're A, super expensive, and B, they're not actually, I mean, the Auth0 stuff I got it almost working and then started running into problems with it where everything would work fine, but you hit refresh on the page and it would lose the login, and it would go and reauthorize. It would basically go and do the callback and reauthorize the page. So you had to go redirect to login every single page refresh, which just wasn't working well. That wasn't going to work. And supposedly they have a way to make it work, but I'll be darned if I can figure it out and stuff.
Mistakes. Sorry, well, can you show us some of the code, please?
So yeah. So let's see. So, like I said, we got two parts of it, right? The front end is all Vue stuff. So I've got lots and lots of Vue components in here. And we're using Vue Router for routing and Vuex for the store. So I've got a whole bunch of different Vuex modules in here. And then down here is all my Python backend stuff, which is actually, the funny thing is the Python backend is smaller than the front end stuff. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not a front end guy, and most of the work has been in the front end on this. But, so this is, the code that we're looking at here is the development code that I've been currently in the process of breaking, trying to figure out what I'm going to do about the, so, but, yeah, like I said, it's nothing super exciting. We've got, I am using Vuex a lot. Sorry. But yeah, so I use the modules in Vuex for different pieces of it. So I've got a piece so I can get photos out of Facebook and Dropbox, and the web dev one I haven't quite gotten working yet. That's a pain in the butt. Whole bunch of mutations, and then a bunch of actions, which I found, so I've had the hardest time figuring out how to get things working right when you are doing API calls and then waiting for them to come back and then actually updating the state and stuff like that. So I found that to be probably the hardest thing out of anything I've had to try and figure out. Other than that, Vue's been like really easy to figure out.
So that was effectively state management.
that's one of the two hard problems. So it makes sense.
Everything else in Vue has been like super simple. You know, I've got. So the good news is, well, the good news is once I figure out the authentication issue, it'll be really easy to put it back in, put the new thing back in, because all my routes are already set up. The ones that require auth have metadata, use the meta in the view router to say which ones require auth, and then I just have so there's just a before each that tells you what to do with, which right now it's commented out, it's broken.
Sure.
But
That's awesome.
but I've got a before each that just checks the authentication. So once I fix my authentication issue, hopefully I'll be back in business and I won't have to change everything. And you also have, one of the other things I found that I really liked is the parent-child things in the router. So I've got, let me go back to the production one, which does not have now. So, you know, one of the things I've got, for instance, you can see this is photo strip, and I can go and click on the map here, and it goes to Photos map. We're still in Photos. We still have all the Photos stuff and all the you know, all the filtering and stuff.
Yeah.
But I can go and switch views very quickly and stuff, and then it shows where the pictures were taken. Then I can go and switch over to the people view and look at all the people that I have photos of.
And it found all those faces automatically.
Yep, it automatic. So I used AWS's recognition for the facial recognition, which works amazingly well.
Nice.
And so,
I've never done it. You hear that, Mike? How does it work when it's two faces?
when there are two faces on the image,
Yeah.
so I've got one. Hang on, I was going to upload it. I'm going to show you the uploading, but let's see if I can find that. Let me go back to the photo script real quick. Do I have it? Yes, I do. There it is. Okay.
Oh, geez, normally there's a bunch of faces.
So this is a family photo from Christmas, and hopefully that goes. And so yeah, it recognizes every single face on there, and so, and then I can go and so what all the AWS recognition does, it says this face is the same as this face, is the same as this face, and then it's up to me to put the metadata on who the person is. So AWS doesn't keep track, it doesn't store any of that information. All it's really storing is, it's not even storing the image. It goes and what AWS does when you pass it a picture, it goes and takes the picture, turns it into the data it's using for doing facial recognition, and that's all that it keeps. That's the only data it keeps. It doesn't actually keep the image data or anything. It just keeps the data that it converted it to, and then it uses that to check that if the people are the same and stuff. So, you know, that way when I go to, you know, persons, and I come over here and I've got 5 pictures of my grandmother, you can see it found, and it highlights which face is her on each one of these. So. It's just a view. It's just the standard view grid with what is it, row wrapped, and I think it's justify edges or something like that. Is the
Flex.
Yeah, using the flex grid list. So yeah, no, that was, like I said, that was actually one of the easy. That's all been the easy. That's been the very easy stuff. It's all the I'm using Beautify for the component library, and I found that to be actually really nice to work with.
Definitely is. I use it all the time. I love it.
So yeah, now I'm just got to figure out what I'm going to do to fix my.
So your main issue is the for each authentication. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So yeah. It was originally I was using Incognito, and that just it just wasn't working. So And I tried the Auth0. I really didn't want to use it because it's like really expensive, and this is like going to be, you know, a consumer product, so you know you're not going to necessarily get tons of payment for every user, but you're going to get charged for every single user you have by Auth0. So not really the best thing anyway. So now I'm kind of stuck back into the roll your own, which I mean, I've written 20 million of them. The problem is that it's authentication. You're always going to mess something up in authentication, which, you know, that's the thing that sucks about it. So I've been working on writing my own. I still need to, in order to access, so that I still have access to the AWS credentials, so that I can do things like the file uploads to S3. I submit things to SQS queues whenever so when you're doing when you're doing uploads from Dropbox, from any other service, it actually just basically takes all the URLs that you want to upload, dumps them into an SQS queue, and tells the back end to go deal with it, and then it'll just go and check to see when it's done. So I dump that into an SQS queue, so I use the queues for that. So I really need the AWS credentials. So there's two parts of Cognito. There's user pools and there's identity pools. User pools are their whole, you know, where you can build users and login screens and all that. Identity pools is their way of being able to say, hey, for this token, you know, basically this token gets this AWS role, you know, go ahead and use this AWS role type of thing, so that you can access things like SQS and stuff. So I still need that part of it. So I actually got that working just a few hours ago. So now really the only thing I've got left in the login stuff is to figure out the same problem I had with Auth0, but now I have to write it myself instead of worrying about Auth0's, which is when I refresh the page, make sure that I don't have to go completely re-authenticate. I don't really care so much about, I'm going to have to go get a fresh token, you know, a refresh token type thing. That's not a problem, but the loading the page and then having to do a 302 to an authorized page and then back, that's not going to work every single time. So as long as I can load the page and get the credentials every time, you know, from URL, I think we're fine. So I got to get that fixed and working. But once I do that, I think, fingers crossed, I might be back in business.
Very cool, man.
Cool.
That's awesome.
But it's been a very trying week.
Yeah. I feel your pain. I was doing a thing with Okta actually last week, so trying to figure it out. Not the easiest to start with, but luckily they actually have documentation specifically for Vue.
Yeah, no, the Auth0 does, and actually Auth0 does as well. They both have documentation for Vue. Like I said, the issue that I ran into was, and I don't know if it's the same as true with Okta, the issue that I ran into with Auth0 was, their code was just, it was every single time, every example. And then the other issue I run into is, so their examples were done properly in that they weren't using local storage to store tokens. Every other example on the internet, you go anywhere on the internet and it says anything, you're looking at anything about tokens, everybody's storing their tokens in local storage. You go and read like a WASP or any of these things, they say, don't store your tokens in local storage. So it's like, well, then why in the world is every example doing exactly what you're not supposed to do? So
Yeah, we've ranted about that over the past years about how, especially in the early days of Angular, I think most Angular code was garbage because people wrote easy to write tutorials as opposed to best practices.
yeah, well, that's been, I find that to be the biggest struggle with any new technologies. Especially the AWS stuff. Yeah, the AWS stuff, there's lots of, here, get AWS up and running in 15 minutes. And then you look at it and it's like, well, that's great, but I need to do this far more complex, you know.
Of course, that's one of the refreshing things with you again was their docs written correctly. And they're written correctly. Yeah. Here's how to do this the right way. They spend so much time on getting the right first time. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks, guys. Yeah. Ready for Edwards? Anyone else want to talk? I think we're there. You're gonna have to.
The only few things that I'm working on now is where I can share.
Let's talk about it.
help me get up there. Yeah, I don't do that.
Oh, shit.
Justin, I have an idea. We should do where everyone gets a Lone Star and do drunk coding or something. Like that should be one meetup.
Oh, well, how about we do a hackathon where every mug you introduce, you take a shot. Until he
Ooh.
dies.
Oh man. So you want people to show up next time, right?
Code qualities to win the dramatically.
Well, who was it that said like there's a certain point where like you drink enough and it's good, but then you hit a limit?
XTC is the ball runner.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Is that true?
I feel like it's true.
It's like it's a joke.
No, that's like from the 80s.
I don't remember that one. Yeah, I remember reading about that long ago.
I think it was someone from Microsoft actually first talked about it or something. Okay, so I'll get started here. So the main talk is about NativeScript versus PWAs. Well, I'll get to that. Wait a second, come on. Who am I? Well, my name is Edward Boswell. Got a nice cool little picture there. And I've been coding for 14 years, but most of that is PHP and WordPress and horrible HTML tables and stuff. You know, when it was cool when you're first learning how to code and you're like, man, I got a table and now I learned CSS. And I'm like, oh, awesome. No, it's disappointing. If you ever go to Wayback Machine and look at your old code, whew, fun stuff. I've been using Vue for about 3+ years now, and I've been using NativeScript for about a year. Actually, I started using it before it became officially 1.0. So I actually came out in like March, April of last year. I think something like that. But basically, like the moment the creator, Igor, first released it, I found it just randomly and was like, holy crap, this is awesome. Because I was researching, I was like, React Native sounds cool. I want to learn that. And found Vue Native, which wasn't really that good of a port and kind of died. And didn't update in the past year or two. And then there was NativeScript. I'm like, what's this NativeScript thing? So you're probably asking, well, enough about Edward. What is NativeScript? And why should we choose one over the other? And so basically, I'm just going to look at both options and go a little more in depth about NativeScript because that's kind of the more thing that I'm apt to do. But there's some pros to both. There's not one correct answer. I can't tell you, you must use NativeScript or you must use a PWA. So first, let's learn about what is a PWA. A PWA is a progressive web app. Progressive web apps are built with your typical knowledge of what you have for the DOMs. You have HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And the nice thing about PWAs is they work offline through manifest and service workers. So a service worker basically connects the dots and realizes if it's cached and it has it, or if it needs to grab new data. You have a manifest that basically is a JSON file that says, hey, here is your icon and what everything should look like, your colors. You also have access with the PWA to push notifications, which is super helpful for a lot of people, right? That's something that they found that I think there's a better take rate of people using your app by about 30% if there's push notifications. But now we're in push notification overload. If you have an iPhone, now you can like close all at one button. You don't read them anymore, right? You also have access to device hardware APIs. So some of the stuff like your camera and your basically your basic stuff you have already with the browser, you have access to hardware-wise with a PWA. The other really nice thing is you can skip the App Store and Google Play stores. Basically, you can be any website and just tell people, hey, go ahead and make it a PWA. Put it on your home screen, right? And it's a super easy way of distributing. You don't have to worry about the authorization process through Amazon, or sorry, through Apple, and paying them a developer charge and stuff, right? There is some pros and cons with the security. There's some limited security options. So obviously you have all the security that you have with browsers, which is good. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and there's a couple extra things, but there is some limitations on some of the device security that you can do. So for instance, like Face ID and things like that, you don't really have access to all those APIs, or to my knowledge, maybe there is. No. I haven't built too many PWAs in my lifetime, so, but there's better options in those cases. Also, distribution-wise, security-wise, it's on the webs, which means anyone could, hack your website and distribute it differently, and you have a problem. So there is some pros and cons to it. And PWAs are extremely powerful, and something that definitely has changed the landscape of a lot of development today. But what is native script? What is this other thing? Now you're probably going, well, it has the word script in it. Does that mean I have to learn a new language? No, it's actually just JavaScript. So no worries with that. It's built with XML, JavaScript, and CSS. So it's not using DOM. In fact, the reason why Vue works so beautifully with native script is because it uses a virtual DOM, which then allows it to render things without the actual DOM, which means you can, of course, build cross-platform apps with native script. As I said, it is fully native, so it is the exact same performance as a native Swift or Java application through iOS and Android. And you have 100% code sharing between iOS and Android too. So write once, deploy to both. That's pretty fun. That's awesome. You have full access to all native APIs with 0-day native API support. So if Apple tomorrow says, hey, we have this new awesome API, this new thing, you have access to it today. I mean, that's as good as it can get. You have high performance with smooth animations, so you don't have any janky kind of feel if you have a high load on your DOM with other systems. So you have up to 60 frames per second, so good performance. You also have access to Vue dev tools when using NativeScript Vue, so that's pretty cool. So I love Vue dev tools, and you can do it all from when working on it. Of course, there's the con of you have to deploy to the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. You have to, have them review it, and it takes some time. Usually a week or two for it to deploy, or you ask for that quick fix, and there's some of that cost there involved with the App Store cost. As a lone developer, maybe that's not good, right? I don't want to spend $100 a year on deploying to the Apple Store and then them taking 30% of my profit. But at the same time, that's one of the pros to it, because unlike PWA, you can actually charge for this and make it a lot more easier to basically secure it a lot more easily as well. So how does NativeScript work? Well, you can see here you have the native Android and iOS layer there, and in between that layer and NativeScript, you have a runtime that gives you all that native API access, so it basically pulls directly. The difference between this and other type of engines like Ionic or other stuff, or I'm trying to think of like React Native or something like that, most of them will either be a fully web version where you're actually rendering DOM, or it compiles it to a native version. With NativeScript, what you're doing is actually, it's not compiling it. It keeps it as JavaScript. Your JavaScript runs as JavaScript. With it, you have the core modules, and then you have NativeScript plugins, so it's very adaptable, and most of those plugins connect to the Cocoa Pods, or what does Android use for their plugin stuff? I don't do a lot of Android development.
Some kind of Java.
Some form of Java, and it basically connects to that. And then you have the application framework itself, so Vue, Angular, pure JavaScript, or TypeScript. So there's actually 4 different ways you can run NativeScript. And then you have your application code, the stuff that you actually write. So you're just the small, very top layer on top of it, but you get full native performance with it. And with one line of code, you can both build for iOS and Android, which is super powerful. I've fully fallen in love with working with it. Just like how earlier, Justin, you say you love working with Vue because of documentation and it's just super easy to use. Same with you, like your front end is super easy except for 1 or 2 things with like Vuex and stuff. But same thing with this. It has become a joy to work with instead of it being a chore. And that works more towards my heart than anything else, right? It's like, that really
makes me make a better decision. So one thing I wanted to mention is there is a difference between web, hybrid, and native. NativeScript is more purely a hybrid app since you're not actually writing native code. You're writing JavaScript, but it sits right in the middle, which kind of sounds kind of similar to what Vue is if you compare it to React and Angular, right? You got the super basic, React, which, everything is, you have to add it on. While Angular is super, core, this is how you have to do it, and that's the way it has to be. Kind of the same here. You have native, which is very much, you have to write it with Swift, and you have to do it this way, and you have to call these functions. And web, which is very open. You can do anything you want with web, but you have downfalls with like Cordova, which basically, you have really bad performance with a lot of that stuff. I don't know if y'all know about some new stuff. It's not even part of my talk, but Quasar, which is a Vue framework that just released their 1.0 version, you have a 100% code sharing where you can write one thing and then deploy it to both web as well as iOS and Android, but it uses Apache Cordova, which basically is just a DOM wrapper around your, or a wrapper around your DOM, basically. So you have really bad performance with Cordova, unfortunately. Not really bad, depends on your application, right? So it's like, what do you prefer in this setup? So let's see what a hybrid NativeScript app looks like. Well, the easiest way to get started is you can just skip the whole CLI. You can basically get started with just your browser and iOS apps. So you can see here we have the playnativeScript.org, and I'm gonna go ahead and open it up. Actually, I already opened it up earlier, but what's really cool about this, and I just realized you're not gonna be able to see my phone screen. I'm not sharing. Oh, that's true. I could do that. I actually have a thing I could probably screen share, but we're already rocking and rolling, so maybe not. But what's really cool about this is you have a full-on text editor here. It is imported Vue, and with two different apps, you have. Let me go to things in the way there. You have Playground iOS app and Preview iOS app. I'm actually going to get this. I want to share this with you. First off, this is one of the downfalls with Apple. You got to get that little dongle just so you can do USB port, right? Fun stuff. I know I have cool cases with everything. I like everything organized. It's component-based wiring. Actually, that's not a bad idea. I like that idea. So I should be able to, now that it's connected, do this. This is actually a janky way of doing it, but it works. You can see me now probably. Hey. But then we're going to go to my iPhone. Hey, can y'all see my phone? Yes. Sweet. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and actually just extend this out so we can see side by side. So you can see my awesome, cool phone apps that I use. But basically, we're going to go to, nope, that's not what I'm looking for. Where is all my stuff? Oh, there it is. Somehow it's called productivity. But what's really cool about the two apps, Playground and Preview, first off, I'm going to go ahead and go to Preview. So you download the Playground. Actually, I do want Preview, but it actually slows my old app up. So Playground allows you to connect with the playground that you see here, and with the QR code, you can automatically connect to it. And then with Preview, right now it has my code of what I was playing with last night, but it actually has some of the components that you see here on the sidebar here, and you can actually interact and see what they look like without even going to the app here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Preview here. And we're going to scan the QR code. And just like that, it's going to immediately connect to it and show, there we go. We have a NativeScript app. So you can see here, we are connected to it with my iPhone. And we have a Vue component that is rendering a fully native app right now. I know, it's super crazy how quick that is. And that is without even doing any CLI stuff. It's just playing around. And what's really nice is, like, let's say I want a switch component here. I'm going to go ahead and just put it in here. I'm going to save it. and it automatically reloads that with that component there, and I can actually play around with it. So super quick and easy development with it. And you can see there's actually quite a few things that you can pull from. You also have full access to charts that are pre-made using the native kind of charting application. So I just put in an area chart there, and you'll see just like that, I have a fully native chart being rendered in app, which is mind-blowing how quick I just did that. So like I said, it is a joy to work with, so super fun. I'm gonna go back to my slideshow here because I don't really want to talk about the preview app. The preview app is cool and playground, but what we really care about as we are nerdy developers, we want a CLI to do everything for us. So it's super easy to install. First, step one, you install the npm install g globally native script. From there, you make sure you install what you need, which is Xcode and Android Studio. Since it is going to build those apps, it's going to build a, what is the file format, IPA or IPC for iPhone and 80K for Android or something like that. Whatever it is, it's going to compile those for you when you run the build command. You'll see that we can do the TNS create my app. So TNS stands for Telerik. The native script, I didn't even put this in my slide. Forgot to put this in here. So native script is actually backed by a company named Progress. Originally they were called Telerik, and then they rebranded about a year ago to Progress. Basically they make apps for people, and they are the corporate backer for native script, which is open source. Once you create TNS create, so TNS stands for Telerik native script. Once you create it, then you just run your bundle and HMR. So you're probably wondering, what is HMR? And it's one of the coolest, Did you guess what it was? Okay. HMR is one of the coolest things that's in beta right now for native script, but I freaking love it. It stands for Hot Module Reload. And just like how in we're doing web development for Vue, we just go to the browser and it just kind of automatically refreshes. It kind of does the same thing, but without even recompiling your app. It just kind of updates it automatically using Webpack. So it just, you make a CSS change and it's there. You want to change color, boom. You want to add a new thing, and it's just there. And even cooler, and this is what really made me fall in love with it, is a friend of mine, him and I were working on an app together, and we had a iPhone 10, iPhone 6, and an iPad all connected to USB ports, and with one click, HMR, all three instantly updated. So super easy to work with. Native script Vue does have some differences than regular Vue. Because we're not rendering stuff in the DOM, we're not going to import Vue from Vue, we're going to import Vue from native script Vue. So that's one key difference, but that's a pretty easy thing to work around. The next difference is calling the Vue function. So instead of new Vue by element ID app and rendering that app, we're going to actually not call any element at all, since we don't have a DOM to actually render to. And we're just going to hit render, and then we're going to do a frame, and then put the app inside the frame. So everything in a native script is based on a frame. You have the frame of your phone, and then your page lives inside of it. And you can actually do nested frames and nested apps or pages inside of it. But you need that initial frame to basically render out first. So you call that in your main thing. Sorry, was there a question?
That's awesome.
Yeah. The other main core difference, this is the main thing that's going to impact you most, is HTML versus XML. So we're so used to doing stuff with DOM, and you can see here, we actually have Beautify here up, and we have a template with vcard and h1 and paragraph. But on a native script Vue app, we actually have XML. So they have predefined tags that basically do different things. So a stack layout would be basically a div, if you think about it that way. A label is not a HTML label, it's a label that is where your text is. So it's almost like a paragraph tag. So you start just making these connections, understanding which ones are which, and you can build stuff out. And there's actually a lot of things that we're used to in the DOM that they basically built out an XML form that makes it super easy to connect to. All the other things like classes, style, all of your v-on and v-click and binding and models and stuff is all typical Vue, all the same of what we're used to. So it makes it super easy to build out. It's the same file structure. You have a .vue component where you have a template, script, and style CSS. So you just build out those components exactly the way you want. You can have nested components, and you can build what you need. What also makes NativeScript really powerful is you have a marketplace that has pre-built stuff that either pre-installs some CocoaPods or does stuff. So if you want a fingerprint scanner or Face ID, you just bring this library in, just like we're used to with NPM. You just build it in. Also, the other nice thing is with NativeScript is if there's a NPM package you want to use that doesn't affect the DOM, you can just add it in. Right? You just npm install, you import it in, and there you go. So if you want Moment.js, boom, you put it in, you have access to it, right? You don't have to worry about it. The nice, powerful thing about that is you can really bring in a lot of powerful packages out there. For instance, I've been learning TensorFlow.js, and I'm like, oh man, I could actually do some machine learning on the device itself, train a model or even use a model, even because it's not using anything with the DOM. I can actually just push those data points in. That would be really powerful. I can build a native app using machine learning. However, remember we have full access to actual APIs, and we have ML-Kit and ML whatever for Android. So we could use those as well. So there's so many things you can do that has power. So I want to actually show a full-on demo. Earlier I just did a basic one, but I actually already TNS created a app and actually show you how quick we can build some things out. I think that'd be cool.
I got like a question.
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
At the end, or you want me to start asking?
Ask now, ask away.
First question, so you said iOS and Android.
Yep. If you say BlackBerry, I'm just gonna ask you to walk out the door.
tvOS, what about like tvOS?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know about tvOS. In the documentation, there's nothing about it. As well as I know Apple recently talked about their new
That was gonna be my next question.
iPad OS or whatever. I know they're probably gonna make it so iPad OS probably works. tvOS is not something that it's geared towards really, but that would be a really cool plugin or add-in or something. I don't know how that works, as well as watchOS as well. The problem with Apple is they just keep on throwing out more and more OSs. Isn't that such a crazy thing? But there's luckily based on a lot of the same core concepts, so I could see someone possibly porting this. Just something crazy to think about. This all started from a guy named Igor. I'm not going to be able to say his last name. It's a Russian last name or something along those lines. And yes, and he basically did this as a passion project, and then it became a thing. And he's like, oh my God. And then he released it to everyone, and people are like, oh my God, this is a thing. It's awesome and cool. So, there's definitely more and more possibilities. As I said, it started out as a thing, but now Progress actually officially, supports Vue. And in fact, if you see the GitHub stars and just usage and NPM, it is exponential right now for NativeScript, just because so many people love Vue, and then crossing over to NativeScript is such easy crossover. Currently they only had JavaScript, TypeScript, and Angular, and if you really want to build an Angular thing, probably not. But Vue just made it a perfect fit, and you can tell. Sorry, I know you deal with it every day. One other thing I wanted to show, and I already opened this up, so I guess I don't need to. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So you were showing there that clearly, if you had a Vue project that you were doing on the web, so clearly you can't share the front ends because
so you can actually you
at least share share for instance your UX code. Or your
yes, 100%. So all your Vuex, all of your regular script stuff, everything can be shared 100% for that. The only thing that can't be shared is your DOM, obviously, your template tags. That's the only thing that can't be shared. And changing from that to XML is quite easy. That's probably the easiest thing you could probably do out of the whole thing. So yeah, you can build it out easily. However, a couple months ago, more than a couple, about December, January, I saw a talk on YouTube, and I need to find it, but it was, I think when they released NativeScript 5.0, now they're on 6.0 now they're about to release, or they just did, but they were talking about future releases where you could have 100% code sharing, and actually showed a demo of a regular Vue app where they just put a tag in the template or in like their main JS file, and it actually rendered out in NativeScript. I don't know where they're at on that. Like I said, I've only saw that once. I've yet to hear anything about that, but the possibility is there. And just having that possibility, especially with Vue 3.0 coming out and a bunch of other really big feature releases of stuff, I mean, it's not a far reach of imagination that you could have 100% code sharing between all aspects of it. So, yeah, but right now, you'd have to build your own template part of that Vue component. Yeah. Any other questions? The other thing that I really love about it is just like how we fall in love with Vue because the documentation is so easy to use. Same thing with NativeScript Vue. In fact, one of the key contributors is Jim Looper, who is a key contributor in Vue, but also NativeScript Vue and works for Progress as well. So she's a big forefront in the push, as well as I believe her and a couple other people manage the actual, not NativeScript Vue, but Vue documentation. So it has that same kind of feel. It has really good documentation, as well as which components you're able to use in the DOM. So if you want a date picker, you know, you go to the date picker and you throw in some date in the date picker and you get full-on native date picking capabilities. And you can also do like VF and VShow and things like that, where you can just go, here you go. I will mention one caveat that is a little bit more difficult to put your head around is even though you have access to CSS, you don't have access to all of CSS properties. So there is some stuff where like I'm like, I want to do a box shadow, and then I'm like, oh yeah, box shadow is not supported. You know, it's one of those things that you kind of forget because you're so used to doing that in the DOM. But there's a lot of ways around it. Same with gradients. You can't just put like CSS, you know, gradient, there you go. There's a plugin that actually allows you to do gradients, but it's quite easy to install and put it. Yeah, let me pull up my iTerm here. I just realized I didn't have iTerm pulled up. Which one is this? Oh, it's the Vue Meetup. Hey. And then we're doing my app. So what's really nice is we can do TNS run iOS. Right now I'm actually specifically targeting iOS, which by the way, I need to do Xcode because I wasn't planning on doing it from my phone, but I want to have my phone plugged in as well as run the simulator. Oh, one other thing to mention, because these are native apps, if you want to build an iOS app, you kind of have to have Apple, right? But there is a way around it. They actually built one other thing. So there's 3 ways to build a NativeScript app. You have the preview and playground app. You have the CLI, but there's actually another thing called NativeScript Sidekick. And you can actually just use their cloud servers at someone else's computer to basically do the builds for you and run everything for you. So you can do that as well. I don't know the pricing to it. I don't really like using a GUI interface to build my app, but you know, it is what it is. So we're going to go ahead and go to the simulator here. I'm simulating a iPhone 10 or 10s or 10R, whatever. They're all the same screen size, I guess. And I don't need that up anymore. And we're going to go ahead and do TNS run iOS bundle. So I'm going to bundle it together using Webpack. And then we're going to do HMR because it's a freaking awesome feature. You can do it without. It just takes a couple seconds longer for it to re-render. It's going to actually close your app, rebuild it, and then push it back up again. But it's only going to rebuild the parts that you changed, right? So it's a very quick rebuild process. But with HMR, it just kind of auto-magically does it. I don't know. I don't know how they built it, but it is one of my favorite features of it. So I'm just going to run it here. And while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and open up my VS Code. I actually have the app pulled up here, so I'm just going to show you the file structure. Obviously, just like Vue, you can change your file structure to whatever you want. However, there is one folder that is always required, which is the app resources. If you're building for iOS and Android, it builds out both. You can actually specify just one or the other. From here, you actually have your Xcode and PLS info as well as assets. So what's really cool is through the CLI, you can actually say, okay, build the splash screen. And you can just give it one image and it just rebuilds it out for every single screen size. Same thing with the icon. So you don't have to like Photoshop this, okay, do that. No, it's just boom, done, which is super nice. So you can see here's all the different app icons with the different sizes there. Same thing with the launch screens. You have the default sizes, both vertical and horizontal, as well as a fill. You actually have both old iOS and new kind of here, so it's actually backward compatible very nicely. So the old one is actually haven't specified, where you have a new one where you have a background layer and then you have a actual center image that then renders over it as well. So this is all just iOS. It's not even native script. That's just kind of how they do things. Same thing with the Android, Android Studio, et cetera, et cetera. This is a purely new app I just installed, and you can see that we have our Webpack config, all of our platform info. It builds out everything here. But main stuff that we need is just in apps, and we have our package.json, which just talks about that. We have SCS or Sass. We have JavaScript, our main app. We have our component or variables and stuff, fonts, etc. But then we have our main home view. So you can see very easily that it looks exactly the same as most of our Vue components that we're used to. But now we have this page instead of a div wrapper or something that we currently do. We have an action bar, and the action bar is that title bar at the very top of iOS. And what's nice is I'm building this out for iOS and Android at the same time. So it builds out the native version of that for Android as well. And hopefully, hey, look, it built. So this is our app. And you can see we have the home, we have the color, we have in the middle there a blank NativeScript Vue app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a different page. Sorry, I'm all about making things look good. So there we go. So now we can actually do this in real time and see it update. I'm going to move this out of the way so I can see. Okay. So let's say, man, that's really the you don't see it, but the zoom thing. So let's say instead of Zoom or home, this is actually a dashboard, or let's say it's a workout app or something. And I just hit save, and within about 3 or 4 seconds, you'll see it update. It's gonna make a liar out of me. That's what happens when you do. Why is it taking a while? Oh, you know what? It's doing. I did not realize this, but I also have it connected here, so it's probably on my phone too. So, and I didn't actually allow permissions, so it's probably confused. So I'm gonna do one thing. I'm gonna unplug it here. I'm gonna rerun that TNS run iOS. So you can actually see I actually removed it, and then it kind of popped up in the error because it goes, hey, your device is not there.
Question was,
Yep.
so the file structure you showed us, that was auto-generated by TNS create?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah. Was there a certain question about it?
No, I just wanted to make sure that that's just how it comes. Right?
It came exactly like this. I've yet to do any coding because I want to do a full-on live demo of me doing some stuff. Oh, look, boom, dashboard, there it is. Awesome.
Okay, so a minute and a half.
Oh, I'm sorry, a minute and a half to make a full app. I'm so sorry. But what's really cool is the HMR works really well with variables and stuff. So let's do what's accent. Let's make it black, right? And it should recompile this in a second, make it all black. Unless it doesn't want to do it. I don't know what's Webpack build done. It's getting confused. I don't know why. By the way, you can see it actually built the app here. but it's not doing the hot module reload right now. Why is it not doing it correctly? Okay. I unplugged this other one, so it shouldn't be causing issues. Did I spell something or do something wrong? Debugging at its best. Yay! Dash S bundle with dash S HMR. Run iOS. All right, I'm gonna do one thing here. I'm gonna do it where I'm not doing run iOS. I'm just gonna run in general. Let's see if that works. If it doesn't, that's fine. I can do it without the HMR, and then you'll actually see it just build and take a little bit longer to build. But it is pulling up, which means it is building the initial build to start with. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But I'll play around with actually changing the message, and I want to show y'all pulling out something like an image or a page or a slider or something, how easy it is. You can just throw it in there and it does it. So you can actually see it's restarting the app. It's doing all the things. So you can see it's building it out right now. Hey, and it's black. Cool. So if I do app and change this to test, it should, in theory, update. It's going to make a liar out of me. It really is. Use your imagination. Or I can, you know what I think it is? Because it's saying it's doing on a port. Maybe it's just like when I'm screen sharing. But I'm going to do it without the HMR, just so at least it builds, and hopefully that will work. From here, we can actually pull in anything we want from, let's actually do one of my favorite things, which is tabs. Oh, tab, there we go, tab view. So, you know, this is very common with iOS, where you have a tab view, where you have tabs on the bottom. And we can actually just pull this tab view in very easily, just by replacing our page. Oh, by the way, there it is. Hey, there we go. Hopefully what I did now fixes it. So I'm going to keep the action bar there, but replace, oh, before I do that, you'll notice that there's a grid layout. So grid layout is just like grids in CSS. So you have flex and grid capabilities in DataScript. So you can actually build some really dynamic things with it, which is really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and replace with the tab view. And actually, I'll probably need the method in here, or else it doesn't know which thing I'm changing to. So we'll just do that. And surprisingly, I don't know why the default does this, but it's a computer property, but you can actually do regular data too. So I don't know why they decided to do a message as a computer property, but that's their default. So, you know, it is what it is. Let's see, Webpack build done. It's just not wanting to rebuild stuff in real time. I'll show you when I'm not screen sharing, and it'll automatically work because that's the way IT works. So I just hit the rebuild command, killed it and rebuilt it. But you'll see that we have that those tabs on bottom once it rebuilds, and we can do it. Also, natively, you have you'll see here we can call different things in our style. We can make things flat. We can make it transparent. So, you know, in iOS, you have that transparency layer that you can use. And there you go. We have now a tab view. So now you have tabs on bottom. You can also change this to have tabs with images and icons and stuff. So you can build a full-on native app. And the best part is, this is for iPhone, but Android, it would do a similar thing and make it very native looking for Android as well. Since my hot module reload and stuff is not working the way I intended, I do want to share with y'all some code I actually can share, which let me just pull up some random page here. Come on, there we go. Let's go to code. Let's do a Z project. I know my naming conventions are great. Miscellaneous, yeah. And my app here, this is actually an app I started building for a friend of mine. You know, I've talked about this before, but yeah, I'll add a folder to the workspace. Why not? My friend and I, we ran a company together teaching magic online in Spanish. Kind of fun, right? And so, you know, we have a channel that we sell courses. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm learning this thing called DataScript. Maybe if I try playing around with it. So unfortunately, I've not updated this, so I actually can't build it right now because I haven't looked at this for 6 months. because I decided I had other things better do with my time. But I just want to show you how I actually built out my components here. So instead of having it all put into a home.view, I have an app.view, which you can see here. I changed the page background color to a light gray eggshell color, and I've hidden the action bar. The reason why I hid the action bar in the initial page load is so that then my subsequent pages in my tab view have their own specific title on top of the action bar. So right now, if you see what I have, no matter if I go from tab 1 to tab 2, you'll see it's changing content here, but the action bar is not changing. And this app that I created, on the other hand, it actually does change based on what tab I'm in. So you actually see I have a source icon that I'm pulling the icons from here. I know this is not the best way to do it, but this is 6 months ago. NativeScript was very young at the time. I'm also checking if I'm logged in. I probably should do this as a state thing. This is where I knew a lot about Vuex. Now I know a lot more and realize this is stupid. But hey, whatever. You live and learn. You can see here, I'm actually mounting on next tick, checking if it's logged in. And then also I'm setting orientation. So I'm using a plugin here in NativeScript for orientation so I can know if it's vertical or horizontal, and either format it where it can't be rotated unless in certain pages. So I'm currently doing a thing here for playing video. And so I am saying if I'm on that video page and rotate, then take that video and make it full screen and hide all the other elements. So I'm actually doing that through just checking the orientation on page load in the main app. You can also see I'm disabling rotation when I don't want it to be used. You can see I'm pulling in 3 main components: homepage, categories, and search, I guess. Are those 3 I'm using? I guess so. Home, categories, and search. I don't remember making half of this. So on the home page, you'll see I actually have quite a lot of components here. I should have actually, because I was hard coding a lot of this, and I should have done it as a template and before loop. But I didn't, because I was in the middle of building this, and this is how I build. I build it straight and then make the loops and put in my APIs. By the way, because, this is one of my favorite things. I love Axios, and because this is NativeScript and I can use all those NPM packages, import Axios, boom, and I can hit all those APIs. However, there is a plugin that allows you to do background API calls, so it's great for image uploads and things like that, which would fall short if you changed a new page while it's still trying to upload. So highly recommend that if you are going to use NativeScript.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job.
Yeah. So I just want to go to the video page because I want to show you in here. You'll see I actually have a video player that I'm pulling in via importing the video from NativeScript Video Player, which is that plugin that I'm using. You can see there's a lot of, man, this is really bad now that I'm looking at it. I could have done a lot better on this. Ay caramba. Okay, but you can see. Well, it's just typical Vue. I can do it better. Now that I've gotten better at it. But you can see I have a play video and saying if it's paused, do this. I actually made it where you can scrub. What's ironic is, you can use this the regular default video player, but I wanted a video player that you can customize my own skin to it, if you will. So I customized the video player, and one of the funniest things, I'm going to go to the playground because I know this will actually work in the playground. I'm actually going to refresh the playground here, but there's actually a slider in NativeScript Vue. So you can see here I have a slider option. So obviously I unplugged it, so I can't actually show you everything. But this slider is actually how I'm going to make it so you can actually see the progress of the video as it goes through, as well as scrub through the video as well. And I can customize it based on CSS. So I can actually just change the color, size, opacity, whatever you want. Also with the grid view of NativeScript, with the grid tag, you can actually stack things on top of each other if you put them as the same row, basically. So I'm doing that here with a lot of my stuff to basically do that. I'm watching orientation. I'm displaying those controls. When it's playing, I'll actually have it fade off after 5 seconds. So kind of emulating that kind of iPhone, or sorry, that YouTube kind of feel of you let go and it goes away. Also, one thing I had to learn about is by default, you can't just make it play through the speakers, right? So there's a plugin that actually, or a setting that you can turn on that will allow it to play the audio. Because,
What's it do with you?
well, no, so without the plugin, if you're in vibrate mode or silent mode on your phone, it won't play the audio. You'd have to flip it on to actually hear audio. And this is actually the default for every iPhone app out there.
I feel like.
Yeah, and which is a bad, user experience if you're trying to play a video. You don't have tell people to vibrate their phone, and so not as good. So there's actually a plugin that overrides that and actually makes it play music for reals. Yeah. Actually, let me pull up my main.js so you can see here. I'm doing a lot of things that I don't even know what I'm doing on the delegate prototype thing. Application did finish launch. Man, I don't know. Oh, but here's really cool. So this is the View Dev Tools. So I can say while I'm connected to it, so you connect it with your USB port there, and it's running in your browser. You open up Chrome, and you can actually see all of your components in View Dev Tools. You can interact with them all from that while running in hot module reload and checking everything and updating things in real time. It is so quick and efficient to build native apps with this. It is. I don't know why anyone would want to use Swift anymore, right? So that's pretty much it, I guess. I can keep on talking forever if you want me to, but
I think Mike's got questions.
yeah, probably. So that is NativeScript View.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. And if you want to reach out to me, you can always reach out to me on the View Meetup and Slack. I'm trying to promote. Cool. Thank you very much.
Questions, comments?